E6, temporary use. Yes, temporary use permit application number TU 00091, 397 3rd Avenue. Ms. Babbage, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Actually, I'll be making some introductory remarks before turning it over to Mr. Anderson and Ms. Wozniak to introduce the report and provide an overview. But as part of the background for this, Your Worship, back in January 15th, at a special council meeting, council approved the servicing of the subject site at 397 3rd Avenue for the province's Hearth project with a budget of about $468,000. Council's approval of that was subject to three things. The approval of a servicing agreement that would define the services that the city would be providing at the site, the approval of a lease agreement between the city and BC Housing for the operation of the proposed facility, and thirdly, the approval of the temporary use permit, which is before council this evening. So as an update with respect to the first two conditions, Your Worship, we're pleased to advise council has released for the public the approval of the servicing agreement and the lease agreement, subject to council's approval of the temporary use permit this evening. So in other words, if council approves the temporary use permit this evening, then we have approval of the servicing agreement and the lease agreement for this site. Also, Your Worship, attached to the agenda as a handout this evening is the letter that Mr. Anderson was referring to that we would like to provide a brief overview on for council's information. This is a letter that came in late Friday, April 19th, 2024, to Your Worship in council from the Minister of Housing, and it sets out the province's commitment to move forward with the City of Prince George and its key partners on the implementation of the Heart and Hearth program. Specifically, it confirms funding for the site at 397 3rd Avenue for 43 units, with the intent that the site will be used as transitional housing. Then the second page of the letter sets out a number of bullet points for council's information. Those relate to information regarding a qualified operator for the site. It speaks to the level of staffing at the site. It speaks to site security measures that the province has promised will be implemented. It speaks to a joint communications plan with coordinated timing and key messaging, as well as data and information sharing. And importantly, Your Worship, I'd like to highlight the second to last paragraph in this letter, which acknowledges the city's request for provincial information sharing with respect to the city's intent to seek an application to the courts to close a Lower Patricia encampment to overnight sheltering following offers of suitable alternative shelter and housing to the occupants. It also acknowledges that following the closure of the Lower Patricia encampment, it's the city's intent to remediate and close the site to permanent sheltering. So, Your Worship, we're offering that for council's additional information in connection with the temporary use permit before you this evening. And I'll turn things over to Mr. Anderson and Ms. Wozniak to provide an overview of the report.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So before the Director in Planning and Development details the temporary use permit at 397 3rd Ave, I just wanted to provide some clarification for council on the letters that were provided as part of the agenda package tonight. So we did receive a lot of letters, between 50 and 60 letters for tonight's agenda, both in relation to the TUP, but also in relation to the notice of motion that's on the agenda, as well as letters of general concerns, comments, ideas in relation to the Lower Patricia encampment. So in order to make sure all these letters were received by council, if a letter spoke specifically to the TUP, it was placed under agenda item E6. If the letter received did not specifically mention the TUP, it was placed under correspondence. So that was kind of the rationale for how it was categorized. It was with the intent to make sure that all letters were provided to council.
Thank you. Ms. Wozniak.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, the applicant has applied for a 3-year temporary use permit to allow a housing supportive use at 397 3rd Avenue to facilitate the modular construction of a 43-unit transitional housing facility for the unhoused community. The City of Prince George and the province signed a memorandum of understanding in June of 2023 to reinforce the partnership and responsibilities of both government organizations with respect to suitable housing for the unhoused community. Pursuant to the MOU, the City identified a City-owned site located at 397 3rd Avenue for the temporary transitional shelter facility funded by the province's Homeless Encampment Response and Temporary Housing, or HERTH, program. As Mr. Babich has already noted, at the January 15, 2024 Special Council meeting, Council considered a request from BC Housing that the City fund and complete the site preparation works for a proposed transitional housing facility at 397 3rd Avenue. Council approved the request subject to a few conditions, with the issuance of a temporary use permit for the transitional housing facility being one of them. On March 12th and March 19th, 2024, BC Housing hosted 2 online community information sessions to provide an overview of the proposed housing project. City of Prince George staff were also in attendance to outline the temporary use permit process. BC Housing and City staff also responded to questions from the community during these information sessions. Your Worship, the information presented, along with a summary of the feedback collected from the information sessions, is provided as an attachment to the staff report in the supporting document titled BC Housing Public Consultation Summary. Through the public notification of the proposed temporary use permit, several items of correspondence were submitted. As Mr. Anderson has previously explained, the correspondence submitted in response to the public notification has been included on the agenda as part of this agenda item or under the correspondence section of the agenda. Administration supports the proposed temporary use permit and is available for any questions Council may have.
Thank you, Ms. Wozniak. First of all, I would just like to thank you for all of you, everybody out there that took the time to write to the City Council regarding the encampment, especially the people living in the Miller Addition. I heard a lot of your concerns. And thank you for coming to my office to express your concerns. And your written letter now is a part of the tonight's discussion, just so you know. And we'll do our best. Housing is a provincial matter. We as a city, we are operating under the community charter. There are things we can do. There are things we cannot do. I would like to, in the future days, to spend more time with all of you to explain to every single one of you for every question you might have regarding this matter. The MOU, me and the Premier signed back in June, our goal is to end encampment. We're not there to shovel encampment. I said 3 times today when I introduced this report, temporary is temporary. So we'll open up the debate now to the floor. Councillor Skaken.
Well, thank you, Worship. And, this is definitely not an easy issue. And I want to thank the residents for sure, both for and against this housing. And I think one of the most important points, like there has been so much work going on with regards to homelessness, all the issues at Moccasin Flats. And I think the minister in his response letter, and I think Mr. Babbage pointed it out, is I would like to further acknowledge the city's request for provincial information sharing regarding the letter to seek the application to the courts to close Lower Patricia. Now, if we had not done this work to create this temporary housing, our chances of being successful in court would be, I think, significantly less, perhaps zero. And so I will support this. And I guess in the transition phase, because there's still open burning, there's still a number of things going on in the flats there. As folks move in, is that going to be towards the end of the year then to administration? I'm just trying to, or is it next year, the timeline?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Skaken, my understanding is that so should this application be supported this evening, city crews are ready to go on the install of the servicing and site prep works. Following that, there would be then the building permit and then the actual installation of the trailers. So my understanding is August, September would be the goal right now with my communication with BC Housing.
Great, and I think that's important. And there is also an opportunity with BC Housing making more subsidized and low rental housing available in the next several months, that some of these folks within these camps, if they haven't been offered temporary housing already, will be. So my hope is that we can even shorten that up more. And it's again, it's a temporary thing, but talking to residents and a number of people in the community, the most important thing is to get Moxton Flats shut down, cleaned up, and have it situated in such a way where this can't happen again. And they're going to be in this spot. There's going to be enough housing, and I think, Your Worship, it's been so much work, and I think we lost the court case that in the beginning, in my opinion, we shouldn't have lost, but we did, and the court has really tied our hands where we can't do anything without their permission, in a sense. So I will support this reluctantly, Your Worship, but I do think going forward, it's an opportunity to have the end in sight for Moxton Flats, and to have those folks living there in some sort of dignified housing with the proper sewer, water, shower facilities, and all the rest of that. So, the bathroom use, the open fires, and all the other stuff that happens in the outside is going to be contained. So I think that's good going forward. And again, thanks to administration and BC Housing with this, because it is a step in the right direction. It's been a long road. I apologize to the residents for all that they've had to put up with. And I just think going forward, this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I take in the residents, not just the Miller Edition, and also all the folks living in the encampment. The condition is deplorable. It's not acceptable by any standard. So we are together. I think we are moving in the right direction to address this very complex social, cultural, economic, housing issue. And together, if we talk to each other, work together as one people, Upper Patricia, Lower Patricia, as one people, I think we can have the situation improved drastically in the days ahead. Thank you. Councillor Vasil.
Thank you, Mayor Yu. I'll move it to get it on the table.
Second by Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I was looking through the different concerns, and there is a boatload of concerns, and I can assure you that council around this table and our city staff and the BC Housing people and a bevy of other people have been working tirelessly to come up with a solution. This is what we've got in front of us. I'm going to be supportive of it, and we will get to a better place as a result. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Palillo.
Thank you, Your Worship. I really empathize with the residents of Miller Edition and the businesses surrounding there. I did a walkabout with about 10 or 12 residents just over a week ago. I know fellow councillors also did that. And I hear you. I hear you. As been stated, this is a very difficult, complex issue. But as was highlighted in the minister's letter, there's some significant, I believe, steps forward. The fact that this will be a secured site, there'll be fencing, there'll be lighting, there'll be surveillance, staff, to me, is a massive improvement. As has been stated by my fellow colleagues, there has been an enormous amount of work that has been put in by staff and this council and everyone here to get to where we are right now. Not to mention that the city is going to invest $450,000 to service the site as well, too.
500,000.
Just under 500,000, I think it is. Perhaps Director Wozniak can clarify that afterwards, but I believe it's about 450,000 or do you want to clarify that now?
It's 468.
468.
So close.
There are other facilities coming online soon as well that will help, I believe. This is about getting people out of the encampment, under roofs. It's a template to move forward. It's not perfect. Nothing ever is in life. And I believe it'll reduce, we hope, some people going back and forth. And I believe this will be an improvement to the public safety for the residents in Miller Addition. But it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen right away. And I understand between now and when it comes online in September, October, we're going to have some difficult days. And we'll do everything that we can to support you through that. It's probably no comfort to you now, but I believe in a year and a half, 2 years from now, we'll be in an entirely different spot. So for those reasons, and the fact that it's our clear goal, and we stated it tonight, that we want to close that encampment and remediate it, and the minister has acknowledged that, that is massive. I'll be supporting the temporary use permit.
Thank you. Councilor Ramsey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just want to thank all of those that came out tonight. I know that this is a topic that is impacting people pretty much every single day. The businesses, East Queensway and those in the Miller Addition. I've moved out and Councillor Scott has moved in, but we are still apprised. I think we probably get 10 or so emails a day just alerting us to issues. And I know myself, Councillor Sampson and Bennett had a walk along the encampment with some residents a couple weekends ago just to hear about the issues they're experiencing. And I think that they are incredibly valid, and that so are the frustrations, because yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I just want to say that I think that this piece of infrastructure is really critical to help us move towards the goal of closing the encampment and getting everyone housed. We know that phase 2 of our First Avenue housing project is a ways out, and this temporary housing, I think, is going to provide us with the ability to transition people, residents from the encampment, into safe, clean, and supported housing. Supporting this temporary use permit, I think, is how we get there. And I know that there are going to be, I think Councillor Palillo said it really well, some frustrating days ahead still, and I think that we will continue to navigate those. I was really saddened to learn, speaking with residents, that they don't really know the work that goes into this file, that all of my colleagues spend trying to strategize and navigate and lobby and advocate to try and make progress on this. And I think the letter, which media needs a copy, so I'm getting text messages. I don't know if someone can shoot a copy up there. But I think the letter is really a testament to that work that's been going on. And I hope people know that this is a lot of work that goes into this. So I think I am going to support this. I think this is really a way for us to get to that goal of getting people housed and closing the encampment. So, and if people want to chit chat, feel free to email me. I'm open to hearing all of the feedback, as are my council colleagues, I'm sure. So thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and thanks to my colleagues for the discussion so far. I do want to start by thanking our staff. They've done a tremendous amount of work on this behind the scenes. I think Councillor Ramsey mentioned we haven't always been able to communicate 100% of what we're doing. We're working with lawyers. We're being careful on this, but staff's done a tremendous amount of work on this to get this to this point. So thank you very much. I also I want to thank the folks in the Miller Edition. Many of you are here, folks in the downtown. I know we got some residents here from the Connaught area and the businesses. I've heard a lot. I've heard a lot. I've heard your concerns, and I keep hearing them. And I think I've had the chance, I know I went down with Councillor Palillo one day, Councillor Ramsey and Bennett another day, another time with a few other residents. Been down there lots recently, and even just myself trying to see how this evolves and grows regularly. But I think to sum it up, I've read all your correspondence, been talking regularly. I think the 4 big key issues in the area are air quality, fire safety, public safety, and property damage, theft, and vandalism. I'm sure there's other concerns, but those seem to be the 4 big recurring ones. And I agree, they're major concerns. I do think that this housing facility will help alleviate some of those. It will be staffed, it will be managed on what can be brought onto the site. It won't be fires won't be permitted. Warm housing will be provided for people, so there's no need to, have that fire keeping you warm. Food will be provided. There's no need to be cooking that food, and so the fire hazard will go down. The air quality issues will go down. I think it'll be much more managed on that property that perhaps doesn't belong to the folks residing there. Won't be brought on site, which would hopefully reduce some of that theft and vandalism we're experiencing. So I do see the wins here. Some concerns I have would be if it's not well managed. Some concerns I have is if people choose not to live in this housing. That makes it obviously not effective. I think I think the opportunity there, though, is to try this out. It is temporary, as Mayor Yu emphasized. So I think where I'm at is I'm going to support this conditionally, and the condition being that this facility will directly result in getting people into housing. We need to see people going into either this housing development, some of the other new units that are coming online, whether it's First Avenue, which is beginning construction late this spring, early summer, hopefully, for phase 2, whether it's the North Star, which we're yet to learn more on, but is coming online soon. So my support is conditional on getting people into housing, 1, and 2, that this will result in the permanent closure of the encampment. That is a must for my support. If it doesn't, I have no hesitation revoking a temporary use permit, and I'll happily bring that forward if we're not met with support from the ministry in our injunction. We're seeing confirmation from the minister now in this letter, which is reassuring, but we need the support for the injunction, and we need to be successful in that injunction for the continued support of this facility. So that's my condition. We're putting in somewhere between $450,000 and $500,000. I think it was $468,000. That's a lot of money. I didn't support that. This is the provincial government's responsibility. This is their bill to pay. We're supporting out of an abundance of cooperation and partnership that I think is above and beyond. But from my perspective at least, our support only runs so deep, and we need to see the province fulfill their obligations and help us on our end and our concerns as well. So I'm going to support, again, clearly on the condition of those 2 things. But in the meantime, we know this isn't happening overnight. So even if this passes today or whenever, it may not, it's not happening overnight. It's not going to be until the fall. So we need to commit to working with the residents of the community and the businesses on all the conditions surrounding this that are affecting people, on how to address those and mitigate them in the meantime, because we can't have a summer of people fearing for their safety, their property safety, or their health. That's just not gonna work, and that's for all folks. So that's my condition, Mayor Yu, but I'll support based on those things. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sampson. There's only one taxpayers, and there's only one Canadian. We all together and just together. First of all, I would like to recognize, also like to take this opportunity to recognize in the chamber, Phil, Brad, April, Sarah, their generosity over the last couple of years, their effort, they have made a impossible, very dangerous situation a little bit better. And I just appreciate it. You guys took that on yourself, and I'm sure there'll be lots of work in the days ahead. And I'm glad you guys are here with us today. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I would probably echo many of the same comments that my colleagues made around the thanking of staff for the work that we maybe don't communicate well enough. I know that, hearing loud and clear from the residents that we need to do more in terms of communicating out. I've had the opportunity over the last few weeks to do numerous walkarounds with various groups of residents, and I have to, there was a comment made to me on my last walk around by a resident, which I've been thinking about a lot since that time, and that was where I spoke about I live in the Heritage area, and I don't have to go to bed every night thinking and worrying about what may happen in my neighborhood overnight. And I can't speak from experience. I know Councillor Ramsay and Councillor Scott have either lived in or are currently living in the neighborhood now. But I can't speak with experience what the residents of the Miller Addition are going through, or what the business owners of the East of Queensway businesses are going through. At the same point, I can't speak with any experience as to what the residents of the encampment are going through. We are in a horrible situation, and I will be honest when I say that I feel that we've been talking about this for a year and a half in our mandate, and I know previous council has been talking about this a lot longer, and I feel like at times this is moving a lot slower than I ever expected or wanted it to. I want to ensure that the residents of the encampment have a safe place to lay their head at night, to get the support that they need. I want to ensure that the residents of the Miller Addition can feel safe and comfortable in their neighborhood and in their homes. I know that we have numerous letters expressing concerns, and I think Councillor Sampson talked about kind of the four main themes. And I know that those are addressed in a lot of those will be addressed if the government can follow through on the commitments outlined in the most recent letter from Minister Cowling. So I guess perhaps I do have a few questions to staff. So I guess my first question through to administration would be, again, even since January, there's been numerous announcements of other housing projects that are coming to our community. So I'm just wondering if there might be a little bit of how this may be different and support those residents of the encampment that may be different than the other projects that have been announced. I'm thinking North Star, Queensway, First Avenue, some of those other projects.
Ms. Wozniak?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just hesitant to comment on a BC Housing program or operation. Sorry, Councillor Bennett. Again, the understanding is this would be a transitional housing facility with, I would say, the items that both council, residents, and staff are looking for in terms of the security, surveillance, fencing, that type of site that would have a defined boundary, that would have an operator, that would be staffed. So in terms of how that differs from the other sites, I'm not 100% comfortable to comment on that. I'll be very honest with you. They sound similar in nature from how it's been described. However, this being the form of housing, being ACO trailers, it's intended to be temporary. These are being brought in on this property for limited time to be a transitional facility with the goal of having people be housed and then move into a form of what would be considered more permanent or stable housing.
So another question through, and this is maybe more of a process question. I know again we have received numerous feedback from residents regarding the application for temporary use permit. I know, and for many months we have been hearing for calls of, we want an opportunity to voice our concerns to Mayor and Council. I know BC Housing had a public consultation. I do understand that it filled up very quickly and not everyone may have had the opportunity to attend and ask questions, but that information was provided. I believe there was a video recording that was available for those who wanted to attend. I guess in terms of the processes, and I'm hesitant to ask, just kind of listening to the dialogue so far, and I recognize that there is a desire to get moving on this sooner or later, but is there an opportunity with temporary use permits to have some form of community consultation, public consultation, between it being tabled and it being voted on?
Ethan.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the public consultation piece for a temporary use permit is a public notification that goes out, and we solicit community feedback through our forums as well as through email and the city clerk email. I don't believe that there's an opportunity for a public hearing associated with temporary use permit.
Your Worship, if I may build on that, recognizing with a temporary use permit, the notification process is that of which Mr. Anderson's just outlined. We, with BC Housing, conducted those two information sessions on March 12th and March 19th. The summary of that information, the feedback collected through those sessions are attached as part of the package this evening, the report package. And just to, I guess, comment on your note about March, again, we've taken that extra step to have this engagement with our community. On March 12th, that first session did fill up, more spots were open, and it notes in the report that there was 50 spots available, 36 people participated. But knowing there was that interest, we ran and offered another second session the immediate week after that. So again, just trying to get the word out to our community members, have feedback and questions be provided to the city and BC Housing, namely about the operation of the site and how it would actually run day to day. That was over and beyond what a typical temporary use permit process would require for notification and engagement with the public. Sorry, Your Worship, and also to add, we did extend the notification area quite significantly. Typically, under our procedures bylaw, it's 30 meters, within 30 meters of the subject property that's being considered for a temporary use permit. This was expanded to include the area bound by First Avenue, Queensway, 20th Avenue, and the Fraser River, essentially. So it was over 1,000 deliveries that occurred. So quite significantly larger than what the 30-meter boundary would have triggered for notification.
And I guess my last question through to administration is, if this was to pass, and I know administration through right now the work led by Director Depino's department, our fire response, the bylaw services have done some work over, in particular over the last few weeks to help address some of the concerns that we're hearing in our letters from the community. In the event that, again, if this was to pass and we move, we're hearing that, it will take time. Is administration able to provide a little bit of information to the public in terms of some of the work or measures that are being done to address some of their concerns in this transition time between approval and it opening?
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Depino isn't here this evening, but I can make some provide some high-level comments on that, and then perhaps we'll have a follow-up information report if this application does pass with more information to the public in terms of some of those measures. But first off, there's been some work done to clean up the entrance to the encampment by city staff with respect to the garbage containers out front, as well as some of the larger items of debris. Those will be cleaned off shortly. And then over the weekend, with the assistance of the wonderful volunteers in the community, there was a community cleanup effort within the encampment with city staff involved along the roadway to help remove some of that debris. So those efforts will be ongoing and continuing regardless of the outcome of this evening's application. And part of that is the regular routine patrols of bylaw services as well as our fire rescue staff throughout the day and evening. And as I indicated, we'll follow up with an information report to council that sets out some of those measures in the future and some of the improvements that we're making, Your Worship.
Thank you. Just, I guess, sorry, and I realize I'm probably approaching my time or very close to, or may have even exceeded it. So thank you, Your Worship. I guess, is there a way that we can, through administration as a follow-up on that, is there a way then that we can increase communication with residents of the Miller Addition regarding some of those actions and provide much more regular contact then? Just, again, there's an exceptional amount of concern shared with council this evening, and I think tonight the gallery is representative of that concern. And if we want, and reading a lot of the letters, there is a lot of support of that they're not against the use of the temporary permit for this transitional housing if the other concerns that they're seeing right now can be addressed. So is there a way that then we can continue to, so we're not doing this in a silo, that we can continue to engage and communicate with residents of the Miller Addition to answer questions, because with the absence of information, people are going to make up their own?
The short answer is yes, Your Worship. And I believe there's an agenda topic later on the agenda that speaks to maybe the start of a communications plan and strategy with the community and at large. But in terms of this application, Your Worship, I'd urge Council to consider the land use implications of this application and provide direction to administration regarding the communications wishes of Council following the application, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Again, I appreciate the ability to speak a little bit longer on this. I was, again, hoping that, I know we have the recommendation later regarding the town hall, and was hoping to be able to find additional opportunities to engage before that decision, before we're able to make a decision on this. But I get from the sense of my colleagues that a motion to postpone is people are, I think, eager to get moving on this. So I will see the rest of my time, Your Worship. And
thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Your Worship. And as I listen to my colleagues, I have to say I sit here with a sense of gratitude. I have gratitude for my neighbors, friends and others in the Miller Edition who have taken the time and the energy to put their thoughts and feelings into writing, to pick up the phone, and to stop by and visit. And that's huge. I can't possibly begin to know what all of the people in this area are knowing or experiencing. So I need to hear. I need to listen, and I need to hear from people. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the questions and comments from my colleagues and from staff. I guess I'm still stuck on the notion, and it's been alluded to tonight, that housing without supports, what is it? How does that help? Not everybody who is without a home has the same issues, has the same needs, has the same concerns. And we need to be adaptive and receptive to those, to creating the connection for those services. That's my only serious wish in all of this. Creating housing is great, but we also need to backstop and support these people, because at the end of the day, they're people, and people deserve to be supported. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Skeekin.
Just briefly to build on Councillor Sampson's comments, does a councillor drive the initiative to cancel a temporary use permit, or is that something, in my experience, in my 20 years, is that something that's driven by administration, by bylaw services reports, police reports, health reports? What does that process look like?
So, Your Worship, generally, if administration observes an increase in complaints related to zoning or business licensing or whatnot, then administration would bring a report to council identifying those observations and concerns and seeking direction with respect to any responsive action, Your Worship.
Great, I appreciate that. Just so that the folks are clear, I mean, and I know where Councillor Sampson's coming from, but we can't just want to, basically bring it to council it ourselves. We have to, it's got to come to administration. And having said that, administration, if there's things that aren't in compliance, administration will give us reports. And then the issue of the temporary use permit will come before us in the proper manner. So again, thank you for letting me in, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Claassen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to acknowledge that besides the Miller Edition, we also have all the businesses in the downtown and the QE who've been very impacted by the conditions that we have downtown. It's not been an easy time, and you guys have waited longer than I ever thought would need to be waited for some movement to happen. I have tried to learn a lot in the last year and a half that I've been on council, and even the time before, because even during my campaign, when I went knocking door to door, the situation in the downtown was by far, it was basically almost every door I knocked on talked about, what are you going to do about downtown? And I think what it recognized is that we as a society have a serious issue here. This problem did not begin overnight. This problem didn't begin 2 years ago or 3 years ago, although the pandemic certainly made it much worse. Any social service agency that you talk to will acknowledge that. But having said that, here we are. We're collectively. This is our city. This is where we live. And just as we celebrate together the joys of things that go well, we also have to take ownership of the things that go wrong. And the current situation with having so many people unhoused and so many people needing addictions and mental health help. Those problems didn't happen overnight, and they will not be solved overnight. Frankly, I think we're being overly optimistic in a lot of our discussion here tonight. I think that this temporary use permit, if council votes to approve it, it's a small drop in the bucket of what we need. The needs are huge, and I think as a society we have to own them. And we might not deserve to own them, but as a society together we're going to have to make the decisions to solve them, and it's going to take a lot of hard work. And like I said, I really think that this is only a tiny step in providing homes for some of the people, as Councillor Scott said, because not everybody's, this won't be work for everyone. But I just I just want to acknowledge the hard work of our staff and BC Housing and the volunteers on the ground who have everybody. The thing is, we all don't want it to be like this, but we have a great big mess, and we all have to do what we can to make the situation better. And it's, I've been plagued in the past by having utopian ideas, and I realize that those that don't really go anywhere. You have to sort of, at a certain point, you have to decide, okay, what will actually work? And I think part of the reason we're here is because we shut down mental health and addiction services, so many of them in the 90s, and then we sort of often, when someone has a problem that we know, we want to ignore it, and we don't want to deal with stuff. And here we are, we have to deal with some stuff. And you can't just wish it away, you can't just law it away, you have to actually deal with some stuff. And therefore, even though I'm not hugely in favor of this, but I want to acknowledge that it's all of our problem and all of the issues, so many concerns, and I just really want to thank everyone for writing in, because your emails don't go unread. And the concerns are valid, they're big, and this is not going to be the stopgap for all of those concerns. But it is something, and so while it's not perfect, it is something that ourselves, as a city, we don't have the money to support on our own. So the province, in whose jurisdiction it is to provide housing, this is what we got. So I will be supporting the motion or the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Klassen. Councillor Simpson.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I have some questions then, Your Worship, through to Mr. Babbage, perhaps. Do I not, or any councillor, not have the ability to bring forward a motion to have a temporary use permit reconsidered, investigated, or decided on, or a report even informing us on the temporary use permit at any time?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, there's a process under the procedures bylaw for a notice of motion if council wishes to bring a request to council to be voted on, and there's a few on the agenda this evening as examples. If council as a whole directs administration to report on any issue, then administration will respond, Your Worship.
Great, thanks very much. So it might not be common, but I'm committing that if the conditions that I have for my support aren't met, then I'll be bringing this back for council and we'll experience it all together. I just want to reiterate in the letter from the Minister that there are commitments made here that we're going to be working together to find an operator for this facility, that we're going to be working together on Heart and Hearth to come up with more supportive solutions for folks experiencing homelessness, that we're going to address site security concerns through the Hearth 397 with a full fence around the site. We're going to be working with them on a joint communications plan, and that there's going to be information sharing in accordance with the privacy legislation policies that's going to help BC Housing support our injunction into closing the encampment. So I'm basing my support on those conditions, that these are met, and if not, I have no problems exploring the revoking of a temporary use permit. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Everybody has spoken. I think we need to build some trust. We need to build some trust for each other. I think in order for this to work, even as a temporary transitional housing, yes, we need to triage better. We need to separate the mentally ill patient from drug addiction, from people really desperate need of housing, not people. We cannot associate people being poor. That means that there's more criminal there. We cannot do this sort of thing. We have to look at all the file rationally. We need to investigate every file. We need to have a better data. We need to help people where they need help. We need to work with the indigenous group. We need to work with the next levels of government, not just one, to coordinate the data that we can collect, that we know, to permanently solve the problem, or at least attempt in that direction as one people. That is the spirit of this vote, I hope. And yes, it's temporary. And we will pivot and we'll hear from you once the project started. And Councillor Sampson said, they want to hear back from the people. Perhaps we should set a more periodic townhouses to hear from each other. And that's how I see it. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.